English step by step. How to use a and the. Step 4. Make sure you watch the steps 1, 2 and 3 in which I talk about using the. So, in the rest of the series, I'll be talking about using a and no article. So when do we use a? Well, a and an are the indefinite article. Remember, the is talking about unique and definite things. A is indefinite. We use a when we mention things for the first time, and a is singular because a really means one. For example, I'd like a cup of coffee, please. So if you're asking in a cafe for a cup of coffee, this is the first time you've talked about a cup of coffee. So you say, I'd like a cup of coffee. Next one, there was a man and a woman with a dog and some children in the park. So here, if we're telling a story and we talk about the man and the woman and the dog for the first time, you use a. Then in later explanations, when you're talking about the man and the woman and the dog for the second time, you say the man, the woman and the dog, because that's not the first time, it's the second time. Next one. They looked up and saw a helicopter in the sky. So that's the first time when you're telling this story that you've talked about the helicopter, so you say a helicopter. We also use a, the indefinite article, when we're talking about jobs and categories of people. And again, a is singular because it means one. For example, he's a teacher. She's a fan of Serena Williams. So a fan is a category of person. Next one. Eric Clapton is a famous guitar player. So a guitar player. Pablo Escobar was a notorious drug dealer. So again, a drug dealer is a type of person. She's an English teacher. Well, there again you have a job, and in this case it's an, because the following word begins with a vowel. So it's an English teacher. We also use a or an when we're talking about the numbers 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000, etc. So a is singular again. For example, the ticket will cost you more than £100. So we have to say 100. Next one, I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. 1,000. We've got 1,000,000 things to do. 1,000,000. We also use a with some exclamations. Again, a is singular. Now, here's 3 examples with exclamation marks at the end. What a disaster! What a horrible day! What an amazing experience! So there you have a with exclamations. So now let's look at situations where we don't use an article, we don't use a, and we don't use the. So that means it's zero article, no article. We use no article for uncountable nouns in their general sense. Well, we need to look at some examples here. General, there may be a shortage of water in the future. Now here, water in general. Now we can also make a sentence using the water. In that case it's specific. For example, don't drink the water. Now that means the water in the house or the water in the hotel. In other words, specific water. Next example. We need food to survive. Now in this sentence, food is general. Now in the second sentence, I didn't like the food. We use the because it's specific. For example, the food in the restaurant, or the food that I ate this morning, or the food I ate in another country. So that's specific. Next example, I need information. Now in this case it's information in general. You can see in the second sentence, I have the information you need. Now that's specific information. Next example. The doctor gave me good advice. Now that means advice in general. The second sentence is a question. What was the advice he gave you? And this is a question about the specific advice. So remember, if it's general and the noun is uncountable, water, food, information, advice, these are uncountable, then we don't use an article. We also use no article or zero article for many common illnesses. Now, when you're talking about illnesses or sickness, then these are often idiomatic expressions. So why do we use the, or why do we not use an article? Well, these are idiomatic expressions, so you have to remember them because often there are no rules. For example, I want to protect myself against flu. No article. But you can also see when you say cold, you need to say I have a cold. Next one. She ate too much and got stomachache. Now stomachache is normally not with an article. On the other hand, if you talk about a headache, you have to say she has a headache. Next one. You should go to the dentist if you've got toothache. Again, toothache has no article. But normally, if you talk about a backache, you have to say he complained of a backache. Next one. Cheese always gives me indigestion. Now you never say an indigestion because indigestion is a word that never has an article. But if you're talking about a cough, for example, you have to use an article. I have a bad cough. Next one. They cured her of cancer. No article. They have a temperature. There you need an article. They have diarrhea. Now this word has no article. She has a fever. That word has an article. He suffers from insomnia. No article. He has a rash. That has an article. So you have to just remember which words, which illnesses do need an article and which ones don't need an article. The best way is just to listen and read English as much as possible, so you see lots of examples in lots of different contexts. So that brings us to the end of this step 4 video on using a and the and no article. So move on to the step 5 video in which you'll find a practice exercise in which you can test your understanding. Remember, click like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and you can request a lesson in the comments below.